Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program Jim Davis, who's VP of Optimization Solutions at MercuryGate. And today we're going to talk about taking control, leveraging technology to succeed in today's challenging transportation environment. As we kind of come to the end of Q1 2018 here, one of my predictions for the industry has already come true, and that is that managing transportation has become much more challenging and complex in today's environment due to tightening capacity and more demanding customer requirements. So how can shippers and 3PLs work smarter instead of harder in this environment? What role can technology play, specifically transportation management systems, in helping companies navigate through this environment more successfully and take greater control of their operational performance? Well, that's going to be the focus of today's episode, and it's great to have Jim back in the program to share his insights and advice on this topic. So, Jim, welcome back.
It's great to be back. Thanks, Adrian.
So, Jim, based on your interactions with shippers and carriers and 3PLs and all these companies that you work with, I mean, how would you characterize the current state of the transportation market? I mean, what are some of the key trends and factors that are impacting the market?
All right. So what I'm basically hearing in the industry is, I see and hear things around like the Department of Transportation rules are making it much more difficult to become a truck driver. The introduction of electronic logging is taken the kind of the fluff factor out of putting things moving things down the road, which in essence has taken capacity from the road. It wasn't good capacity, but it was capacity nonetheless. And then further, there's been a reaction within the industry of larger shippers and 3PLs to actually move to an asset-based model in some cases, or dedicated fleets, which in essence has given us what we have today of a tight transportation market.
Yeah, you hit up on a few topics there that I think is the same thing that I hear a lot from shippers and carriers. Obviously, the driver shortage component is something that is an evergreen topic. It's always it's always there, but it's arguably continuing to kind of make things worse in this environment. ELDs, the enforcement's coming up here now in April 1st. So I think a lot of folks are still waiting to see what's going to happen there. But I think the early indications is that, to your point, some of some capacity is going to come out of the market as a result, and some productivity come out of the market as a result. I think that last piece is kind of interesting too, because I think I saw this a few years ago, when there was a kind of capacity was saying as well, is kind of shippers kind of looking at setting up dedicated fleets or leveraging their private fleets more effectively. So it's interesting you're seeing that as well.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common when we do, I go into companies and do a lot of optimization, automation setups, and where, especially on the 3PL side, like assets were like, 3-4 years, and now I'm seeing it every time.
Yeah, no, that's a great that's a great point, because I think we'll continue to see more and more of that moving forward. So it's clear to me that managing transportation with with spreadsheets and manual processes is just not going to cut it anymore. And those that have gotten away with it in the past, it's going to be more and more difficult to do so moving forward. I mean, you really need technology such as a TMS to help you make smarter and faster decisions. And part of that, or kind of a starting point around it, is around business intelligence, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, in what ways does BI help shippers and 3PLs better, manage and control the transportation operations?
Right. So from my perspective, as a consultant for 20 years now, like key to the success in this industry is and always has been information flow. Okay. And the beauty of the TMS is it facilitates real-time business intelligence. So, from the user level, a user can log in and within depending on the TMS, but within our TMS specifically, the user has direct visibility to everything about how that carrier's performed, his acceptance, safety scores, all of those components that he needs in order to make an effective decision. Is right there at his fingertips at the user level. And then further at the manager level, they have the ability to measure how things are being complied to. So, their ability to comply, or his supply chain, how it's performing to his plan. Yeah, from a procurement perspective, the procurement officers, they have the ability to bring information to the table with their carriers. So they can come in and they can say, all right, well, you accepted 5 loads, you rejected none, but you didn't respond to 25 loads. What's going on? So, it empowers you with information business intelligence. And also, from my perspective, kind of gone are the days when you bully your carriers around. It's not that way anymore. So, you come to them with information, say, okay, you're struggling on this lane, you're doing great over here. What do we need to do? Is this not a good fit for you? Do we need to go with somebody else? You can collaborate, which is really the key to success in this industry, I think, is true collaboration with your carriers, and information or business intelligence facilitates that.
Yeah, I love that point, because I think you're right. I mean, I think the, BI to have more informed and intelligent conversations with your carriers, even with your consignees, your customers, or even shippers, if you're doing things on the inbound side. So being able to have that data, that information, sets you up to be able to have more informed, conversations around where are the opportunities for us to be working more, effectively together. I think there's something else you brought up there that I think is interesting too. I mean, because I think there's visibility to the operations side of things in terms of, perhaps where there might be opportunities, or where things aren't going according to plan within the operations, that BI can help, kind of identify those opportunities.
Sure.
But I think that the other piece is, even visibility around the carriers that you talked about, from a carrier management, standpoint. So that's something that's beginning to become more and more important too, in terms of using BI to manage carriers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's, especially in this market, it's what everybody's focused on right now. It's, so just how carriers are performing, their costing, and really getting down and slicing and dicing, the details around the carriers, and finding the right carrier for the right lanes, which is the real challenge.
Right. And then that brings me to my next question, which you touched upon a little bit already there, because I mean, some of this information really serves as a foundation for, kind of the whole procurement, as
Sure.
part of the process, which is really the beginning of kind of setting up that, successful shipper carrier relationship. Why is, at the end of the day, procurement, such an important part of the process, and what are the benefits of using a TMS to help kind of facilitate and execute that?
Right. Well, the main benefits from a technology perspective are, one, it's, and having kind of a systemic way of doing it, especially when you have like kind of the open auction type thing. And this goes back to the whole theme here around information flow, but you're allowing carriers to compete against each other. You're allowing them to see, where the price is, where the market price is for a lane, which is huge, right? And so you can potentially drive costs down or drive cost up, because sometimes it's not cost effective for any carrier based off of your, something changes in the market and it's just no longer feasible for people to go there. So it really helps you in that. And I'm a technical guy, so this is like really important to me. But when your procurement system is integrated directly with your TMS, it facilitates compatibility. So quite often you'll get like these old school procurement guys. They'll come to you with a bunch of paper contracts and a big box, and you have to go through them, and you'll read things like, okay, it'll be $270 a mile east of I-81 versus west of I-81. No TMS understands, east of 81, west of, so you got to go in and look up all the zip codes. Well, if you're directly integrated with your procurement system, you're creating lanes that the system will automatically understand. Okay. And then finally, just the efficiency of doing the bids online, going out, accepting the lanes, awarding the lanes, all of that stuff is streamlined systemically. And then the migration of those bids or that auction, or however you want to say, into your TMS itself. It's a seamless integration, and you're not having people having to read through PDFs and type them in spreadsheets, reconfigure them and upload them. So just in a pure efficiency sake, beyond, the market value, which is, effectively, allowing the market to compete on your lanes.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that efficiency is huge, both efficiency on the actual, planning and executing, the procurement process. To your point, I mean, I remember when I first started in this industry, it used to be, shippers sending out, 100 spreadsheets out to carriers and then getting back 100 spreadsheets and then trying to, create a master spreadsheet out of all the responses that were coming back. And it was really hard to, number one, analyze the responses that were coming back. But number two, I think more importantly to something we talked about before, I mean, I think part of this is really trying to see, giving the carriers the opportunity to see the lanes that make most sense for them to bid effectively on and relative to what you're looking for, but really to find ultimately that win-win, opportunity of what's going to work for you from a capacity requirement standpoint and what's going to work for a carrier from in terms of going after some of the lanes that you have. And I think that integration to the TMS, I think is critical, because at the end of the day, what comes out of that, procurement engagement is that routing guy that then serves as the, platform for planning and execution, on a day-to-day basis. And, if you ultimately have to do some manual, typing in or uploading and all that kind of stuff, I think it kind of defeats the purpose in some ways. So let's talk about planning and execution now, because I mean, that's really the heart of a TMS in many ways. I mean, how do those capabilities in a TMS, help a shipper or 3PL get capacity and manage costs in this environment?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a simple mathematical equation, right? So, the goal of optimization is to move as few trucks as you have to move your goods, right? So however you execute that, and to save costs. So, it's kind of a balancing act, but those two pieces and the way, optimization does that, it's actually there's two components to it. There's one, efficiency or automation. Okay. And then next is optimization. So, automation is very simple, but this actually has a great deal of value, especially to the carriers. So rather than necessarily running something through optimization, say if you have specific lanes, pedal runs, different components of your supply chain that are very repeatable. The beauty of a TMS is you can set those up on the front end, and anytime something comes in that realm, it'll automatically go out on that lane, pedal run or whatever. So that from an efficiency sake and also from a reward sake, so you're automatically giving to a specific set of carriers, right? Next, from an optimization. So optimization, of course, gives you the ability to do simple consolidation, pull and cross-dock network optimization, true cost-based mode selection, which is huge, right? So when you come from an industry where everything's kind of weight break, so anything under 150 pounds is parcel, 150 to 10,000 is LTL, and blah, 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 So there's a lot of money left on the table there. I see this all the time where I can just plan exactly the way people do today, but actually do cost-based mode selection, save thousands of dollars every year, just in the studies I do. Net, again, it's just trying to get the minimum number of trucks on the road, or the least number of miles, or whatever your component is, by facilitating these two things, automation and optimization.
Interesting. The point you brought up there, with these, rule of thumb, right? If it's below this weight, ship it parcel. If it's above, then it's LTL. I think one of the areas where TMS is playing more and more of it, particularly in this environment, is really kind of doing away with those rules in some ways, because now with the way the LTL market and the parcel market is coming together, I mean, there are these areas of overlap where it may not always, you may always have assumed that it might have been cheaper sending it this way or more effective at sending it via one mode. But in actuality, if you took a different approach, it might be a combination of modes that might be and still meet the service level requirements that makes the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that's one of my largest areas of opportunities I see when I go in as a consultant, is just removing some of the barriers, some of these, 40-year-old traditions that are in our industry, and just, it's like, let's just look at this a different way and see what it looks like. And normally, the the money talks.
Right. Not
always, I'll say, there are times when there's other reasons, but.
Right. Now, to your point earlier in the conversation, are you also seeing companies that are, have their own private fleet or have dedicated, kind of leveraging that mode, if you will, within the TMS optimization and the analysis in terms of how to better leverage those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, fleet is something that generally is a sunk cost. So, you kind of want to use that first. So you're basically utilizing your internal network up to its maximum capacity, and then spilling over into the open market after. It's very, very commonly done now.
Now, are you seeing also, one of the things historically, I think more and more shippers are better about this today than in the past, but I think there's still opportunities there in terms of, they've treated inbound and outbound, separately, but particularly with a private fleet or dedicated fleet, kind of looking for opportunities where they can, better optimize their inbound and outbound and the assets that are being used, by taking that more holistic perspective. You seen opportunities there as well?
Yeah, I still see it, but it's less common than it used to be. So it's, I'm seeing people are finally starting to see things as a whole supply chain. I just, that's just one of the things we've started to move around. So it's looking better in that way, but I still definitely see it. I was just in last week, and, there was a very clear delineation between inbound and outbound, and they weren't ever allowed to intersect. Like two different budgets, two different managerial teams, the whole thing completely separate. It's like, wow.
So there's again, I think that's a great example there where they're perhaps leaving money on the table, opportunities on the table to, better leverage capacity and certainly cost in that environment. So the reality is that, you can have a great procurement event, you can have a great routing guide and partners, but, things happen on both ends. And ultimately, you also have to hit the spot market at some point. And certainly we've seen, shippers and 3PLs kind of having to reach out to the spot market, more often. There's the traditional dialing for diesels, picking up the phone and just calling, 10 carriers and see who could take it. But obviously there's more sophisticated ways of managing, spot or dealing with spot capacity. How does the TMS help when in terms of helping to facilitate that aspect of it?
Really, I don't know, I just kind of came up with this, but, you have kind of like strategic procurement, which is like a procurement bid event. And then you have like tactical procurement is like basically going into the spot market. And so when you do reach out through the TMS, there's the ability to actually like do online auctions effectively. Okay. So, again, it goes back to the whole free market thing, right? So we're, dialing for diesel, the first guy that you call that's willing to accept it, that's who's getting the load, right? So you're able to broadcast effectively, the existence of this demand that you have, right? So that's a huge benefit versus, dialing for diesel or load boards, which are generally first come, first serve.
Right. So you have, I think one of the things I've seen is, the ability to use going back to kind of carrier management, as we talked about before, and kind of the output of the procurement engagement, the ability to broadcast to a universe of carriers that you've already approved that may not be, your primary or secondary, may not be part of that routing guide for that particular lane, but you've worked with them, or maybe you work with them in other lanes. So being able to broadcast a broader set of carriers within the TMS in this kind of spot request environment is kind of what I see as kind of being more effectively than going to a bunch of load boards and trying to post your loads there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll always be a place for load boards, but having a central, effectively your own load board, that's to specific carriers that you have established relationships with, I think that's going to be more and more common and more effective as time moves on. And in fact, we've done a lot of studies on how effective it is, and literally when people use the market to drive costs down, you see 5 to 15% savings on certain lanes.
Right. So, beyond technology, I mean, what else can, shippers and 3PLs do to kind of establish, more positive relationships with, the carriers and be viewed as a, quote unquote, preferred shipper?
Yeah. So, I'm out in the street a lot, going around different people. So I see every variety of great relationships with carriers to really bad. And it's actually fun to watch in a way, but the guys that are successful at and have really strong relationships with their carriers, there's a real simple formula for it. It's, they communicate directly with their carriers. They don't bully their carriers. They treat them as true partners in their supply chain and collaborate directly. That's the formula for, becoming a preferred shipper or 3PL to any carrier. And what that ultimately equates to is your partners when the market changes, when it's as it is today, a seller's market versus a buyer's market, you stick together through both times, the good and the bad, on which side you are. And that's the ultimate result.
Yeah, I think that ongoing, honest, and direct communication is certainly one of the most important factors to your point in terms of establishing that kind of relationship. I think even on a more kind of day-to-day basis, just having carrier-friendly practices or driver-friendly practices in terms of not keeping them waiting at the dock, providing them with a rest area or break area. Those are some of the quote-unquote little things that I see.
Yeah,
also
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm an IT guy, but yes, the human aspect of things, it's very important as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Jim, we're running short on time here, so I'm just going to go to my last question here. I mean, as a way to wrap up, I mean, what questions should, shippers and 3PLs ask themselves to assess whether they have, the right capabilities in place to successfully, navigate the challenges in today's transportation market?
Well, I think, technology evaluation is very important. Do you have the ability to electronically communicate? Do you have the infrastructure in place to do that? If you don't, in today's world, it's becoming much, much, much more imperative for you to have that. I think that's super important. Another piece, and on the softer side, is, change management. So, is your organization scalable to accept change, and then also integrate your carrier pool in that change management process? So I've actually very recently seen, some major problems with implementing technology where technology was implemented in a silo away from and didn't actually integrate the carriers into the change, and then the carriers couldn't accept what we did, right? So, just those types of considerations, being able to scale your organization and include and incorporate your carrier pools in change.
That last point in terms of, change management, working more holistically, including your carriers, I think is something that is very important. A lot of people talk about the change management as being a kind of a roadblock or a hindrance to things because people don't like, to change. But I think to your point, I mean, those organizations that are built around knowing that change is inevitable and we're going to continuously have to change in this environment. And how do we do that effectively, not only within our four walls, but, working together with our carriers and our customers and suppliers, I think are going to be the ones that, going to be more
Absolutely.
successful.
They
So
are
Jim,
one.
yeah. So Jim, thank you for making the time. Like I always say, we always just manage to scratch the surface on these topics, but appreciate you sharing your thoughts and perspectives on this topic today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
And I want to thank those of you that joined us today. If you are watching this episode on the MercuryGate website or on the Talking Logistics website on demand, and you've got a question or a comment for Jim, you can post it there, and he'll be more than happy, I'm sure, to respond via that medium. So again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.